SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to our next lecture. So far we have been, especially in the last week, we have been discussing about the World Heritage Site and the different criteria with different examples and the management and significance. These are the things. So, once we have decided or discussed about the significance values and the management issue, now we are shifting to entirely a different aspect, because once we establish the significance of value of any heritage sites, maybe World Heritage or any other site, we also have to see that while we doing that, we have to also understand what is the status of preservation of that particular heritage property, and depending on that and depending on the significance and value, one should decide that what should be done to that heritage structures. We also have discussed the various approaches what can be done. So, these various divergent approaches of conservation, while on one hand it is very related to the significance of value, is also related to what is the status of preservation, how the property is. And for these, so we are starting with that aspect. It is very important to understand that what is the state the property is. In short, we call is investigation and diagnosis, because like a doctor sees a patient, before prescribing any medicine or any operation, surgery, whatever it is, one has to find out that in what state the patient is. So, that diagnosis is very important. If you do not diagnose the building and we do not understand what are the, not only what is being seen, but what is the root causes of those problems, we can't really understand what should be done. So, today we are starting with that series where we are saying the causes of decay in cultural property. Once we sort of summarize the various causes of decay of cultural property, we will go to the various measures that how these decays can be rectified, or what are the steps or measures which can be taken. So, starting with the causes of decay of cultural property, let us say to this example, you have seen Rani Ki Vav, and this is also Sun Temple, Konark, both a World Heritage Site. But if you look into the detail of Rani Ki Vav, the various sculptures which are there, the reliefs and the bars, you can see that how beautifully they have been preserved. I mean, all the details and everything is very evident. Whereas, if you look into the Konark, the relief, you can see that many of these things have been sort of a damage. Now, we have to understand that why this happened. One, of course, is that in Rani Ki Vav, it was under silt for a very long time. It actually attributed to a good preservation of that. Now, it is exposed to the weather, whereas Konark temple, on one hand it collapsed, many of the structure, it has been anastomosis has been done. That means, many of the broken parts have been shifted back to the fixed to the temple, but also one must understand that the context, particular context, the material of which the Konark Sun Temple is built, the context is very in the close proximity to the seaside, the salinity, all these things contribute to the status which are which these structures are in, and the various details. You can see very clearly that these are the two detail of the two faces, and you can see that how these are, one is in a very good state of preservation and another is not so good in state. But also one must understand that though they are in a different state of preservation, but that is not deterring any one of them being prescribed or inscribed as World Heritage Sites, but one has to be careful, one has to take proper measures, so that at least that is not further deteriorated. So, going to these two cases that these, all of these are important because of the climate condition, because of the material which is there, the surrounding condition. There is a combined effect of a lot of factors which ascribe to that the state of preservation. So, let us see what are the common threads to the historic structures and the sites. So, we will take one by one. One is the external causes of decay, that what are there various factors which cause the decay. You can see there is a historic structure very close in West Bengal. Is a old sort of a machinery structure. It was a residential structure which is no longer in use. So, you can see that there is a lot of dilapidation and decay which has even happened, that there are outgrowths of tea vegetation, the plasters have come out, the bricks have lost their pointing, there are beautiful details of which is there, but partly they are gone. Okay. This still can be a sort of a preserve, but what I am saying that there are combined effects of a lot of factors. It can be negligence, it can be the environmental factor, it can be the various pollution factors, so all this. So, the external causes of decay are one is there, and as we can see that there is also the biological and botanical causes, because sometimes in especially in this climate, the Bengal where we are talking about this example, because of the heavy rainfall and the high humidity, this also encourages a lot of growth of these trees. And so, the biological, botanical, and there is also the natural disasters, flood, fire, tsunami, earthquake, all of these things are also detrimental and can be the threats to the historic structures. And in addition to the natural and the natural disaster, there are also the man-made causes of decay. So, we will also see that what are these causes, so that we can be careful. Now, let us talk about the one by one. So, external causes of decay. Now, let us see the common structural problems. One is the gravity and the structural issues. Now, how the gravity? Gravity is both the force that keeps the building standing and the major cause of their destruction. So, if there is any issue regarding that, then the building is likely, or the structure is likely to collapse. For example, if you see this structure, this is Rashmanchu terracotta temple. It is a ASI protected site in Bishnupur in West Bengal, and this is a huge structure. As a very unique, very distinctive architectural and structural system built entirely of terracotta. It is still standing, because it has a very sound structural system which actually resists the gravity. So, there is as such there have been minor issues which has been rectified, taken care of by ASI, but as such there is not much problem. So, when we talk about this gravity and the related structural issue, let us see that preliminary we can sort of divide that into various aspects. So, one is the foundation. There can be due to the foundation problem, the beams, for example, a stone lintel over a door and window, that can sort of cause a problem. The arches, the pointed flat arch or semicircular arch, that also due to the either a faulty design or due to some later intervention, this also can cause a problem. The walls and arch ceiling, usually a stone, or in other material also we can see that this can happen, the walls and the piers or column. So, these are the basic components of a structure. If you can, we have to analyze one by one and see that what are the problems, because if there is a problem in one or maybe more than one, then there can be a serious structural issue and the building can sort of collapse. For example, in this one, as you can see that this is a small, and this is the functionally both are same, of course, of a different scale. This is also Rashmanchu, which is in Bengal. Rashmanchu is basically it is a structure which is outside the main temple, where during basically Krishna and Radha, during the Rash festival and some other festival, the deities are brought out in these structures, and they are the festival is celebrated around them. So, the deity comes out. So, I think it is a beautiful concept also, this Rashmanchu, that where the deity comes out to the community. And that is apart from that, so there are in Bengal, and a lot of design innovation has been happening around this Rashmancha. The one you can see that is the Vishnupur I talked about, which is a very distinctive architectural style, but in this case, which is a small village in West Midnapur, where you can see that Rashmancha is there, which is a distinctive style because it is an influence of the colonial architecture which has formed Portuguese architecture, the terrace and other thing. But it is, as you can see, that there is a severe problem which has happened. The cracks are on the crown of the arches, the cracks have developed, and there are a lot of vegetative growth are also there. So, definitely that there is a problem of the load distribution, and if it is not taken care of very soon, the entire structure will collapse. We also know various other very well known example, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which attracts tourists from all over the world. Actually, this leaningness of the Pisa is a problem, and we will take that case in detail later on. But that leaning tower, it was not designed that way, but it happened because of some problem. What is that problem? We will talk about later on, but definitely it is the sum of the structural issue and gravity problem. And we also have other examples of various places. This is a leaning temple, the Huma temple near Sambalpur and Orissa. You can see that it is also the leaning, it is called the leaning temple of Sambalpur or Orissa. Here also, because of some gravity and structural issues, because of that sort of this inclination has happened, and we will see that if it is not taken care of properly, there is a chance, probability that these structures will collapse. Leaning tower would collapse because already some restoration measure has been taken up and adopted, and that is a very interesting case, which probably I will do that. So, now when we are talking about that, it is not always that there is an issue with the design of the structure, there may be, but sometimes this may be due to the external causes, like maybe the ground movement happened, which is beneath the foundation, something has happened which caused by the clay shrinkage or the landslip or vibration of subsidence, settlement, heave, sway and so on. So, there can be various factors which can change the groundwater condition or the condition of the surrounding area or the ground beneath the foundation, which also can cause this type of problem. So, it is the and which has affected the gravity and the stability of the structure. These generally, as we say that, I mean, when there are such issues, they will be manifested in various sort of what we say the indication. There are various symptoms, so where it will be reflected. So, the cracks in structures, any structure or historic building, these are actually a very good indication to understand that where is the issue. This is the first step. As you can see that in this a small structure, I mean, depending on from where the problem is, the type of the structure, the pattern and the behavior of the cracks which has developed is the first indication to understand the symptoms, what is happening, and of course, it has to be led with the further investigation. And as you can see that if the cracks are like at the corner of the windows and the top, it is actually this problem is happening throughout the structure. So, one can understand which location and where actually this is happening. So, now in this case the structural cracks are caused by the heaving clay, though the clay has sort of heaved and is giving an upward thrust, and that is really causing a problem. Sometimes it is on one side, sometimes it is along the structure. So, these the cracks. So, these are to illustrate in these sketches we see that these are to illustrate what possible direction it can follow. So, from the cracks, the direction, the pattern also one can understand or can sort of focus on which are the areas where it has to be looked at. What is also important is to identify where it has started in order to determine the cause. This is one problem, that the location of the crack and the pattern of the crack, and also I mentioned the behavior of the crack. Now, what is behavior of the crack? There will be all buildings where there will be cracks. There is no such building that there won't be any crack. Now, the crack as such is not an issue. The issue is whether it is a live crack, because after any structure is constructed or over the years, it will like to settle and in that process some sort of these cracks are manifestation of some sort of a problem. Now, when the crack is a dead crack, that means it is not continuing any further, then it is not much of a great issue. But when the crack is a live crack that is continuing, then this is something has to be very concerned about, that what is the reason, that means there is some problem. So, that means we have to monitor the crack, and these crack we will talk about that monitoring of the crack, there are various ways, probably we will see some of the ways how the monitoring of the crack and understanding. But before going to that, we also have to understand the cracks do not happen only because of the heaving or the foundation problem. The cracks in a structure can also happen due to the sunlight. So, one of the climatic causes we have to understand is the sunlight. The UV light is particularly damaging to organic materials such as wood, textile, pigments and other things of the sun ray, and also it sometimes causes colors to fade and surfaces to become brittle. And another important thing is the thermal expansion, the expansion of contraction, seasonal and diurnal over a time of the day, and that also will happen if any structure. But how does it happen, how the different parts, different component of a structure sort of acts or behaves is a very important to understand, and due to that something problem. Like example, in this case, as you can see, due to the sunlight, the damage has been taken place in the untreated wood, which is caused by the sun, because the wood is not in a very good state, it was untreated. So, the sunlight also can cause the problem. Now, these are the various sort of a manifestation which the climatic reasons can happen. Now, as I said that due to the sunlight, this thermal expansion and other things can happen. But another thing is that, as I was talking about the contraction and expansion, the building materials expand when heated and contract when cooled. So, there is a great temperature difference, and if the building fabric is not able to sort of absorb, it suddenly happens at a very fast rate, and it does not happen to other parts of the structure, then the cracks. This cracks is a manifestation of the stretch, the stress the structure of the fabric is going through. So, what happens is that when the building materials expand when heated and contract when cooled, and as a consequence, as I said, the stresses can build up between the individual materials and the building as a whole. So, it also depends on what are the materials which actually making up that building or the structure. Now, the seasonal temperature and the amount of sun, wind and rain. So, it is not only sun in isolation, but the amount of the sun, the wind and the rain falling directly onto different parts of the building all contribute to the overall thermal movement. So, this thermal movement and how the different components of a structure sort of behaves due to this contraction and expansion of the temperature difference is a very important element or aspect which has to be understood before we sort of study structure. Now, as I say that the seasonal warming and cooling cause down the mass of the machinery to expand and contract, cooling down and the heating up, that actually causes the expansion or the extraction. Let us see these example, because as I say the crack is not only due to the foundation problem, it can be happening due to that the temperature difference. This is Kangra Fort and Himachal Pradesh, and as you can see that there is this part in the Kangra Fort, that this part where some sort of a crack has developed, and this crack is nothing to do with the foundation or the structural failure. This type of cracks generally is happening because the machinery often cracks, which are in effect expansion joints. So, by doing that crack, the building fabric is sort of trying to sort of absorb these expansion contractions. So, these in effect are the expansion joints, and they should not be filled with hard materials. So, for example, if there is a crack is not looking good and one decides to fill it up with especially a very hard material like cement or something, then what happens that the normal expansion and contraction which was happening, it will not happen. So, if you do not give that chance, that flexibility to the building fabric, then what happens, that stress will affect actually the other part of the material, and which can be more severe than going into the smaller cracks. So, these smaller cracks are sometimes one has to understand what is the reason, or something which may be just because of the climatic causes and the sunlight. This is again the example of a brick wall, where we see the differential brick expansion. It can be stair step or vertical, but always has a nearly uniform crack width. So, these sort of a thumb rules are there to understand the crack, what is the pattern of the crack, the location of the crack, and other things. As I said that the crack has to be monitored, one has to understand whether it is a live crack or dead crack. This is what we see is called monitoring of the crack through a glass telltale, where it also this type of a little improved version of the glass telltale. It shows that whether the crack, the movement is happening in the horizontal direction or the vertical direction, and quite precisely because there are the measurements which are there. So, one can fix that, and it has to be done for a longer period, because one has to also understand the seasonal variation, not only the diurnal variation, that in the winter time, in the summer time, how that building is expanding. So, if it is follows a regular pattern, we can understand that it is due to just that expansion contraction. If there is something more, if there is a different types of aberration, then we can say okay, there is some added reason for that crack to become live crack. But whether it is a live crack, dead crack, whether it is happening in a regular pattern because of the seasonal fluctuation or not, or whether there is something as other type of things are happening. So, that monitoring of the crack over a long period of time is very essential, and the glass telltales, different types are there, which also the strain gauges are there, which also shows much more accurately which direction the crack is happening. So, these are very good examples to monitor the crack. So, one before taking a decision that oh, the building has cracks, so we fill it up or we do something, it is a very one has to monitor, and it takes some time, some patience. So, as I say, the monitoring the changes in the crack width across a crack helps determining the cause of cracking and decide what remedial work should be specified. If it is a dead crack and the cracks have happened, one can simply fill up the cracks with grouting and go for the consolidation. We have discussed that, and then, but if it is not there, it is still happening, it is a live crack, and this pattern of the crack, when it is recorded on a graph, it shows some erratic behavior. We must understand that it shows something, a very different reason for that. Now, after the sun, we have discussed some of the aspects of the sun when it happens, with also the external causes of decay is maybe also due to the rain. And rain also which happens, striking rain, the rain seepage, the rainwater there is a waterlogged area. So, the rainwater can cause havoc sometimes, and you can see, but one must understand, this is again a thumb rule, the waters as such, the water is happening, it is striking the wall and other things, that as such is not a very alarming issue as such in general. What is important is that the stagnant water, if the water accumulates in a place, that actually is a very severe issue, and that can, I mean, like in this structure, this again from West Midnapur area, in a small area. This is this was a school of a Catholic school, and this is now very abundant almost. So, you can see that how the water seepage because of the negligence or due to deterioration of the roofing material, the water seepage has been happening, and it is not only is causing problem to the structure, but it is also causing a seepage of the rainwater and also deterioration of the wooden truss members or the wooden beams and the rafters. In this particular case, there is it is a old mansion which is now again abandoned. You can see that water which has to supposed to go from the roof to the ground, the downwater pipe, that is been blocked because of the growth of the trees, and that is causing the stoppage of the water, the flow of the water, and that accumulated water is actually creating more problems. So, it is not only one issue, there is several issues or reasons combined which can cause. So, but rain in specifically some of the areas where there is a heavy rainfall, it can cause a lot of problem and has to be very seriously taken, and the maintenance. Generally the common defects which happen due to the rainwater is the ponds on roof, as I say, the stagnated water, the blocked gutters and spouts. If the water flows out, then there is not much of problem, and it does not take much sort of finance or something or a heavy machinery, just a regular maintenance before the monsoon comes, the cleaning the gutter, cleaning the rainwater pipe, all these things are very important measure, because otherwise the leaves accumulate there and it is blocked due to some reason. So, if they are cleaned and the water is allowed to flow, and then it actually does not cause much problem. So, this blocked pipe, blocked drainage system, the stagnated water on the roof, these actually are can cause a very, very severe problem to the building fabric. As I said, the faulty disposal of the rainwater is the most frequent cause of deterioration in ancient machinery. This the disposal of rainwater, that there is a smooth disposal of the rainwater, regular disposal of rainwater, so that maintenance are taken properly. This is a very, very important aspect of any, especially the machinery structures and other. Now, the rainwater washing against the surface of a structure will gradually wear it away. Now, when we are talking about the machinery structure, mortar and porous machinery structure like the brick and certain type of stones which are porous. So, mortar and porous masonry are particularly vulnerable to this type of structures, the problem due to the rain. Now, rainwater penetration into the individual materials of the structure causes more damage through salt crystallization and through the continual wetting and the drying period, and the action of the frost and the ice. So, these the problem due to rain, due to the salt crystallization, continual wetting and drying, and the action of the frost of ice, this has to be taken up independently, and because each one of them has some associated problem, and that we will cover in our next lecture. Thank you.